Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair today. Today's guest is Jesse P. Gilmore. He is a founder, author, and a coach who helps agency owners move from being overwhelmed operators to confident CEOs. Jesse's built and rebuilt multiple businesses, helped remove critical single points of failure inside of organizations as large as 4 billion plus, and has guided over 90 founders to double revenue, multiply profit, and this part matters, get their time and their lives back. He's the creator of Leverage for Growth, The Method. He's the author of The Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom, and he's the founder of Niche in Control. Jesse's work is shaped not only by his business wins, but by lived experience, burnout, rebuilding, family priorities, and even endurance athletics. Get ready, this is going to be a fun conversation. So if you're a leader who feels like everything is still running through you and you need to change that and wondering, how do I do that? How do I get my life back? This is the conversation for you. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Mo, thank you so much for an awesome introduction, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Jesse, you work with these agency owners who feel maybe stuck doing everything themselves. What are the early warning signs that a leader has begun to bottleneck in their own organization?
Absolutely. So typically a founder that kind of gets stuck or hits some type of growth plateau, a lot of times the business and the infrastructure is not set up for them to effectively scale. And a lot of times the marketing message is out there is that everybody should hustle 60, 80-hour weeks in order for them to sacrifice life for the business. But in actuality, when you do that for long enough, you start losing the vision. And so if you think about founders and warning signs, typically it has to do with if you take on new clients, does it increase your hours? That's like the first kind of like symptom, because if you start putting fuel on the fire when it comes to marketing, you're eventually just going to become the bottleneck and everything kind of sucks. And I know that from my previous businesses, some of the biggest warning signs were when I was working the 68-hour weeks, I was losing the vision, and more importantly, I was actually losing the passion in the business because I felt as though the business was basically like a monster. It took more than it gave, and it made it to where I basically was working a job. And so if you're kind of like trying to figure out the warning signs, working the 68-hour weeks, thinking that you have to sacrifice everything, including your marriage or your kids or your health in order for you to achieve business success, these are kind of like those initial warning signs. There's probably a lot more to it, but those seem to be the big ones.
Yeah. Can you take my audience a little bit through your own journey? Like, how do you figure that out? I mean, obviously you started seeing success and then you realize, gosh, I've got to change something. So tell me about your journey and help my audience understand how that might relate to them and their own growth process.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned I'm like a kinesthetic learner, so I learned through doing, and that didn't really work out very well in the beginning of entrepreneurship. So Niche and Control is actually my fourth business. My first three businesses were based around my skills. If I didn't work didn't get done. In the first business specifically, spent a lot of time in a proof of concept stage. For people that don't really know what a proof of concept stage is, it's where you have an idea and you're taking something to the market and you're trying to get 5 paying clients for your service. And that gives you kind of validation of like product market fit and client results and things like that. And it took us about 3 years to get there because we had fallen in love with the idea. Another issue with the founding part. And towards the time where the business was becoming successful, at least on the outside, I felt as though I was dying on the inside. And the reason being is that we had worked so hard to get the proof of concept out. We fell in love with the idea, and everything was based around our skills. We didn't really understand things like systems and processes and duplication or effective delegation, right? And that perfectionism was one of the mindsets that I had in my first businesses, where no one can do it better than I can, which is like the worst thing you can do when you're trying to grow a business. And towards the end of that first business, we had it where we were promoting the arts and culture in Minnesota, and we had a really cool thing going on when it came to the marketing of it. And on the outside, everybody was like, wow, this is like a super successful business. And I was losing the vision. I was losing the passion for it. I started like hating working, and we actually dissolved the business as it was becoming successful. That kind of set me on a journey of going like, you know, maybe I just need to work harder, or maybe it was just that business. I'll try again. Second business, basically did the same exact thing. Third business, did the same thing. And I was like, something is wrong about how I'm actually creating this. And I'm like, I gotta suck up my ego and I gotta learn something. So I went into corporate America, which I call the golden handcuffs. For anybody that's like a leader inside of corporate America, maybe your experience is different than mine. But when I was in there, what was really, 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 really interesting was I was kind of guided towards finding kind of like my niche within this large global organization. And ironically, the mission I was set on in corporate America was to remove what's called single points of failure within the business. A little bit of a backstory: the corporate environment, they had people that were getting close to retirement, like tons of people close to retirement, and they had all this tribal knowledge or knowledge that was in their head that wasn't documented of how to build the metal that goes into space stations. So like SpaceX was a client of theirs, right? And they were like, man, we got to figure out how to make it so where what took 25 years for these people to learn, people can learn it in like a year or two, you know. And so they set me on this journey, and over the first 5 years I was implementing these systems, training systems, operational systems, learning systems, to make it to where the new hire to independence and the role was a lot shorter than what they had. Anyway, long story short, with corporate America, it led towards a business acquisition of $180 million, which was one of the business units in the larger corporation. And I was like, holy crap. So these systems worked. And not only are they working, they're also sellable. And I started realizing, holy crap, this is the thing that I was missing in my previous businesses. So when I started Niche and Control, it really was an internal journey trying to figure out, what did I learn in my first 3 businesses? And then what did I learn in corporate? And if I was to combine those all together and try to save founders from what I had to go through in my previous businesses, what would that be like? And that was the first version of Leverage for Growth. And I stumbled upon agencies. I started working with Warren, my first digital marketing agency. Took him from $15,000 per month to $100,000 per month in 9 months, just by removing the founder dependence, because they're marketers, so they know how to market. If I can just systemize the crap out of their business, it works. And that became version 2.0 is what worked for him. And we've been doing this. I've coached over 500 marketing agencies since 2019. And that kind of led me on my journey of this. So there's probably more to unpack, but that's from a high level kind of what happened.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit more about single points of failure. Get a little bit more granular. Maybe explain what single points of failure are to my audience, and then from that, how do leaders begin identifying where their business could be dangerously dependent on them?
Yeah, absolutely. So single points of failure is really where in a business, if you think about delivery to a client or delivery in a marketing or a sales aspect, a single point of failure is where one single person, could be the founder, usually is. It could be an employee, could be a contractor, could be a vendor. Okay, a vendor or a partner, where if that person is missing or absent from the business, or they take time off from the business can no longer function as it has, or produce the same quality of work or service to the client. And when we think about single points of failure, it's usually things have not been documented. People are not trained on kind of like cross training to make it to where if someone goes on maternity leave or whatever it is, that the business can function without them. And when you think about a single point of failure, the easiest way, and I'll give you guys some actual actionable things that you guys can do, is if you think about the question of what are all the things that happen within the business, identified as 2 different things: roles within the business and services within the business. And from there, what are all the roles? What are all the services? And within the services, how do you actually execute the work for that certain service? So the service might be like PPC or paid ad campaigns. You might break that down as like a setup of a campaign, a launch of a campaign, a management of a campaign, and then all the account management stuff that happens with it. Once you start understanding what's happening in the business, you can start diving into how things actually get done. And a lot of people rush to SOPs. SOPs, for those that don't know, is a standard operating procedures. It's kind of like the text version of like, how do you get a task done? My suggestion is that you actually focus on process flows. Process flows are just visual representations of how a process gets done, the decisions that need to be made with them. And if you can visually see in a 1 page how a process gets done, it's so much easier for you to be able to change things around, or figure out where the single points of failure are. And my suggestion is you do that work. It kind of sucks for some people that are not systems people, but for people like me, I geek out about it, because I know what the power of an actual like process flow diagram and getting a team to actually see a process, which makes it so much easier to communicate and be able to delegate effectively. But single points of failure are literally the number one thing that every founder needs to identify. And even if you're a solopreneur, so maybe you're earlier on the journey, maybe you're not an agency founder, but you're someone who's doing the work right now. And the best thing you can do is start to document the way that you do things right now. So that way you can use that documentation to free up more of your time to focus on leadership.
Hmm. Man, I love that. I think all small business owners and entrepreneurs have dealt with that or are dealing with that. So, what do you say to the leader who says, man, Jesse, I get it, but I'll delegate once things calm down?
Have you heard that before? And have I heard that
Well,
before?
I mean, asking for a friend, I'm not saying that's me or anything, but
Yeah.
what would you say to that leader? Says, Jesse, I'll delegate when things calm down. I mean, from your experience, is that mindset dangerous, and how dangerous is it?
Very dangerous. And I would actually ask them, like, my counter question would be, when has it been calm? When has it ever been calm? And I listened to one of your podcasts right before this, which is based around adapting and evolving and leadership and so forth. Things are getting more complex than they ever have been with the introduction of technology and AI and people's attention span being spread in a million different ways. All of those things lead towards it not being calm. And the ability to adapt to that actually comes down to being very intentional about it. Anytime that someone says that this thing is very important, removing single points of failure is very important to me, but I'll do it tomorrow. There's cognitive dissonance that starts happening with that. And you can take the smallest little tiny actions. One of the easiest ways to actually do this is what's called a time log. One of my things that I do with clients and start working through the Leverage for Growth method, which starts with carving out time to work on the business, is get them to do a weekly time log. It sucks. It's like pulling teeth. Like everybody avoids it like the plague. But if you just log your time every half an hour for 7 days, include both personal and professional, include sleep and all the things that you would not like to actually admit to, doom scrolling
Yeah.
or whatever, and you just literally capture it. What you should be able to do is understand that there are certain things that you're doing right now that you can eliminate. There's certain things that you're doing right now that you can automate. There's certain things that you can do that you can delegate. And then there's certain things that you need to time block. And when you think about that very simple model, the main goal is that as a founder, you need to be leading the business, which means you have to lead yourself, which means that you have to look at how you're using your time. We all are given the 24 hours in a day, and how we use it really matters. And so my suggestion is that you actually intentionally make it calm in certain time blocks. And the best way to do that is to understand, where am I at today? Time log, right? What can I do to free up that time? So that way I can focus on the things that are most important. If you are a person like me and Mo, which maybe our calendars are packed tight and it's really hard to find time to work on the business, just start that process and try to carve out at least 2 hours per week. Within those 2 hours, use those 2 hours to building systems and going through that same type of work that we were just describing about identifying roles and services. And once you start to understand the power of documentation and using the documentation, not just having it in some filing cabinet, actually using it. What should happen is that those 2 hours turn into 3, which turn into 5, which turn into 8 over a period of time. And when you have 8 to 10 hours to work on your business, you are literally leading the business. So, yeah.
Well, what's the difference, if I could ask a question from that? What's the difference about working for the business as opposed to working on your business? Because I would assume that working on your business means you're actually growing the business so that it's not going to need you to function. So can you take us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. If you think about, I think E-Myth was the first one to use the words like working in versus working on the business, right? And working in the business is really where you kind of own a job. It's what Robert Kiyosaki would call the self-employed quadrant, right? Where the only way to make more money is to increase your number of hours or increase your rates per hour, right? Where the majority of people that I work with want to make that transition from a self-employed person to more of a business owner, which means that you have to focus on people and systems more, and the business runs by itself and there's less of you involved with it. When we think about working for the business, and there is a period of time that you need to do that. And when you get to a certain place, eventually the role and the use of time becomes more focused around the things that are most valuable to the business that can't be delegated, right? One of the best things that you can do is start to look at that time log and look at the value of the work that you're doing. Like checking email every 2 seconds is probably not very monetarily valuable, right? And
Yeah.
like, and it's something as simple as if you just looked at that, because I know most leaders are stuck in an inbox, right? And if
Mhm.
you think about just something as simple as having a 15-minute block at the beginning of the day, 15-minute block at the end of lunch, and then 15-minute block at the end, 45 minutes, but very specific to checking email, but in between times you don't. Oh my gosh, dude. And in general, that would just free up your mind to focus on what's most important. When you think about working on the business, it's the things that you can't delegate. It's the things that are most valuable. So, for an example, working on the business might mean that you focus on strategic partnerships or figuring out different collaboration ideas, jumping on podcasts with Mo, right? Like these kinds of things where you're working on the business,
Right.
where it kind of sets the vision of like, here's where our business is right now, but where are we going? And
Mm.
some of the best things you can do in the working on the business time, and especially in the way beginning at the time of this recording is the beginning of 2026. If you do not have a plan for 2026, or you don't know what you're supposed to do in this quarter to define success, start there with just like understanding the vision. And then from there, it should be a lot easier for you to start to communicate that vision, right? Even if it is to a contractor or
Yes.
anybody that's a part of it. So hopefully that helps you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very helpful. Can you walk us through how leaders can eliminate critical failure points without slowing growth or overwhelming their teams?
Yeah, totally. Time block it. So if there's a certain amount of time, like talking about the 2 hours, you'll realize I'm pretty process oriented. So I'm like, just stick with the
Yeah.
method, right? And it all starts with time. But the best thing you can do is understand that you still need to grow the business. Actually, January is one of the greatest times to actually reach out to prospects and start conversations and grow the business that way. But I think that the most important thing is that you set aside a certain amount of time, whether it's for you, whether it's for a team or together, to be able to start building those systems and identifying those. I think I talked a little bit about the single points of failure and some way of being able to identify those. Another way of being able to do that is literally once you have certain processes that you've identified as a not documented, a single point of failure is there, and maybe the risk of not having a certain person there is very high. You can do a value stream mapping activity where if you're in an office with the people, you have a whiteboard and you literally just take post-it notes and you write down like tasks and then you put them on the board and you organize them that way. That's another way of being able to do it. But the best thing you can do is just to start to realize that everybody has, until you get to a certain point, those single points of failure. And the best thing is that you just start to mitigate them, identify them, and start to remove those as much as humanly possible. So that way you
Mhm.
can actually take time away from the business without feeling as though the business is just sucking you right back in.
Gosh, I love it. I talk with my clients and the people that I coach and mentor a lot about adding value both to yourself and to others. You emphasize differentiated, value driven offers.
Mhm.
How does this clarity in positioning actually give leaders more freedom?
I love that question. the
I was, I was excited to ask it. I thought,
Yeah.
man, I'm ready for this one.
If you think about the offer is the single most important thing for the growth of a business. And the reason being is that if you change the offer, you change the business. You change the offer, you change the system. You change the offer, you change the go-to-market strategy. You change the offer, you change the people. Like it's like it's the single kind of catalyst for everything. Having an offer that is not a Hormozy BS offer that's like guaranteed everything and blah blah blah, and like that just sucks and everybody's using it and it doesn't work. The most important thing is actually within the offer to focus on value as opposed to the other models. Let me take one step back and just talk a little bit, at least for the agency side of people, and maybe this is actually for other founders as well. But typically, there's two main pricing models. You have the hourly model where you base around the hours, and then the cost plus model. The B's are both, first off, dying, second off, suck, and third off, not actually good for the customer. And let me explain why. The hourly based model, if you think about it, if I was working with Mo as a client and I said, in order for me to do that, it's going to require 20, maybe 25 hours or so in order for me to accomplish it. And it's going to be this certain amount because of my hourly rate. I am not incentivized to give Mo the best experience possible at the least amount of time, which is also very valuable. So if I'm able to deliver the same amount of work in less time, it's actually more valuable to Mo than the 20 hours that it would take, right? And
Right.
so the hourly model, you're incentivized to take longer to deliver something. Sucks. And especially with AI these days, you might be able to do the same amount of work in about a tenth of the time than it was before, right? The second model is this price, the cost plus model, where it's kind of like proposals where you bundle everything together, and it's going to cost me this certain amount, and I want to make 30%, so I'm going to add 30% to it, and that becomes the pricing bundle. The problem with that is that the only way to make more money in that is either increase the percentage profit margin that you're trying to have, or just put more things into this basket. It's as though value to the client is as much as you possibly can fit into a grocery bag, but not actually talking about the recipe that it's trying to create,
Yeah.
So when we think about those two models, I feel like as though both of those are kind of dying, and value-based pricing is a lot better. If I was to ask Mo all the questions about where are you at right now? Where do you want to be? What do you think are the biggest blockers? And if we were to get you to a certain outcome, what would be a success for you? And he answers that question. I go, okay, we can get you confidently based around previous clients. We've been able to do that before. And we can do it at this certain amount, which gives you roughly a 5 to 10x return on investment. Does that sound good? That single statement about getting Mo to where he wants to go, that's what true value is, right? And it doesn't matter how long it takes me or how short it takes me. The most important thing is that Mo gets what he was after. Value-based pricing is the single greatest thing that you can ever do to not only raise your prices, but actually have a better client experience. And let me take this out of theory for 2 seconds. We recently released the Scalable Agency Accelerator back in November, and our mastermind clients were going through it before we released it to the public. And on launch week, 2 of those clients, one of them closed a $50,000 a month client, and the client is happy, and a $25,000 a month client. And they all are going, value-based pricing, it's the thing. And it has nothing to do with like anything other than the alignment of core competence, value, and the outcome they're going after, and predictability to get there. And it's the most beautiful thing. So I could talk forever about it, but yeah, it's exactly what is needed in 2026.
Man, I love it. Sign me up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of agency owners that fear that stepping back is going to hurt revenue. And what I hear you saying is, no, it's actually, it's actually the exact opposite. It's just how you use your time, how you create value within your company and for others. So what have you seen happen when leaders finally empower others to own entire parts of the business?
It's one of the most beautiful transformations that I literally got in business with Niche and Control to see and experience. And let me give it an example. So Susan was a creative agency owner when we first started working together, and she had tried pretty much everything in the market, agency gurus, and taught about what to do with creative agencies. And she's like, I'm just exhausted. I spent 10 years trying to build this and scale this agency. We produced great work, but for some reason, something stuck. Okay. And she goes, I'll give you 6 months to turn my agency around, or I'm going to shut it down. Talk about a leadership moment, right, Mo?
Wow. Gosh.
So
no pressure. No pressure.
I was like, all right, let's do it. I rolled up my sleeves, right? And what we ended up doing was we built the systems, went through the same exact activities that I've been describing. And what happened is that Susan got to a place where she started understanding core competence. She started understanding she didn't have to reinvent the wheel with every single client. And actually the team was empowered based around the systems and documentation that they actually owned it. So her time originally was like 4 hours, then it was 8, then it became 20. So 20 hours per week that she was able to work on the business. And what did she do? She started focusing on business opportunities and strategic partnerships and so forth. And she not only doubled her business within 6 months of working together from the systems and so forth, but she talks about this mindset shift that she went through. The biggest transformation was her going away from the doer to a trainer to a manager to a leader to a visionary. And she got to a place where she talked about the acquisition. So she got acquired within 18 months of working together. And she talks about the best thing was this ability to mature the organization to a place where it was sellable or was able to be acquired. And she talked about how the team was so empowered because not only did they have the SOPs, but they had like a project management board, and they were all tracking utilization. They had like certain ways of keeping people motivated, and they loved working together. and they were giving each other high fives and like meeting up afterwards. And like that empowerment allowed Susan's ability to focus on vision, leadership, and bringing that into reality was a beautiful thing. And that kind of transformation allows the vision of the business. So people's original reason on why they started the business to actually come to life. And it's one of the most beautiful things. Not only financial freedom is like one thing, making a crap ton of money is one thing, but the actual like ability to have purpose, to have relationships, to have the time freedom where you can take breaks. Jade went on maternity leave for 8 weeks with her business, didn't even touch anything, came back to record-breaking sales in a quarter, more than she sold in the whole year. Like these kinds of things, it seems like it's magic, and it literally is just leverage first. You leverage before you scale, and it's beautiful.
I'd love to hit just real quick, sustainable leadership, family, the long game. You're very open about making family non-negotiable. How has that conviction shaped the way that you lead and coach others?
Beautiful, beautiful question. So Niche and Control, it's my fourth business. My first three of them, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, right? And I think marriage allows you to focus on long term. It was my first lifelong commitment, right? When I had kids, I started thinking about, okay, this is something in life that's going to live on beyond me. And how do I want to show up, and how do I want to create an experience for my kids to grow up in a better way than I grew up, right? And to give them what they need to survive and thrive, right? And in order for that to happen, the only way that my marriage is good and that my health is good is that there's a separation between me and the business. Okay. And the business can go through ups and downs, and I don't necessarily have to go through the same ups and downs. Right. And it comes from the understanding that each one of those categories, your body, your being, and your balance, need to have daily deposits, some type of thing that you're like on a daily basis. I'm going to be putting in this daily deposit into this category. So for body, I work out every day. And the question is, did I sweat? Right. And then I have a green smoothie. It's pretty simple, right? For my being, I focus on meditation and journaling, and I do that every single morning. I meditate and then I start journaling. And within balance, I'm always doing some type of deposit. And the reason being is that when I focus on business, it's like everything else in my life is handled, right? So I can just focus. And the most important thing that my clients and my employees and my team and everybody in the market needs is for me to be present. And the only way to be present is you got to put it in the right order. If you put business first, you are screwed in long term. And there's so many marketing messages that tell you exactly the opposite. And it's just because they're louder that everybody hears them. But I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody's listening to this right now and you just feel what I'm saying, reorganize your life. Body first, being second, balance third, business fourth.
So I'd love to talk just real quick about what you just said. So for leaders listening right now who feel trapped in constant firefighting within their business, what's a mindset shift that they can immediately change right now that's going to show up tomorrow?
For leaders and founders of a business, the best thing that you can do for your life and business is to have things in the right order and take care of yourself first. It's like the analogy or metaphor of people on an airplane and you put on oxygen before you do it for others. If you can get your life in a place where you feel good every single day in other categories other than business, you're going to show up better. Okay. Leaders need certainty. The only way to have certainty is to take care of yourself first. I know it sounds selfish, but it's actually selfless. And that mindset shift of being able to take care of yourself first and lead yourself, right, is like the single greatest thing that you can ever do for leadership for others.
Gosh, I love it. Jesse, where can my audience read more about you, find you? Where can we get more of Jesse?
Awesome. LinkedIn, Jesse P. Gilmore. If you are an agency owner and you like this idea of leverage first scaling agency programs, you can go to Niche in Control. So NICHEIN Control, CONTROL.com. And you can learn more about it. And if it makes sense and resonates, you can book a discovery call with me and we'll figure out where your single point of failure is.
Man, Jesse, I love it. Refreshing. Appreciate the honesty, the clarity. Thank you for what you do for leaders and for the men and women of the companies that you are helping to change for the better, not just for them, but for their people, for their clients, for their families, for my audience. Make sure to check out Jesse. We'll leave all of his stuff down and all of his links down in the show notes. And if you like this episode, if it resonated with you, make sure to share with somebody. Like and subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter. It comes out every month. We give you the good stuff. Jesse, until next time, I hope to have you on again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Mo. It's been a fun conversation.